Before we get into today's podcast, I want to tell you about a really exciting local event. It's called Breathe Optimism. It's the 10th annual Women Lead Here event. I spoke at this event the last 2 years. This team puts on an amazing day. It's an all-day conference on Friday, October 28th. It is live and in person for those of you who are local or can travel. It will be full of incredible keynotes and breakouts. There's an optional happy hour. There's some pop-up shops for early holiday shopping. It's for women who are ready to get inspired. Their events are game changers. You will have so many revelations, and it's an opportunity to step away, lift your head up, and do some really important reflection and connecting with others. Save your seat. The website to register is in the show notes, and you can also connect with them on Instagram at AZ Women Lead Here. And there's a link on their Instagram to register for the event. Don't wait. Go save your seat. I will see you there. I'm Carla Reeves, and this is Differently, the Lifepreneur podcast. I'm a hyperachiever turned lifepreneur, and after a decade of coaching ambitious leaders, I'm convinced we are far closer than we realize to what we deeply desire, and it's a willingness to do differently that can change everything. This podcast is for the everyday leader ambitious for a rich, out-of-the-box life. This is your weekly nudge and reminder to take a risk to build a life that is uniquely bold, authentic, and in alignment with your deepest values. Are you ready to imagine the next big idea for your life? You are about to meet Heather Willems. Heather is a former client, visual strategist, author, speaker, and founder of Two Line Studios, a digital marketing agency. Heather is an avid journaler and actually found me through the concept of coaching with a journal. I've always admired Heather's willingness and desire to better understand herself as a person so that she can show up as the leader she's committed to being in all facets of her life. She values and works at the integration of her personal life, her business, and her family. In our conversation, we talk about her own coaching journey, how she values having support around her, but admits it's an ongoing practice to ask for help. We dive into one of my favorite topics, creativity, and how you can use it in your everyday life. Be ready to jot down a few notes because she generously shares an exercise from her book, Draw Your Big Idea, and so much more. Without further ado, meet my friend Heather. Heather, I am so excited that you're here. This has been a long time coming, and I just can't wait to have this conversation with you.
Me too. I'm so happy to be chatting with you anytime.
Yeah, we've known each other for a while now. I should have looked back at when we first met, but I think it was like 2010-ish.
Really? Yeah, maybe.
Well, it was sometime between 2010 and 2015.
Yes, it was between 2010 and 2015.
There's a 5-year span. So I'm so excited to introduce you to my listeners. So why don't you tell us, give us a snapshot of who you are and where you are in your life and the chapter you're in.
Oh, sure. So I am Heather Willems. I'm the CEO and visual strategist at Two Line Studios. We are a creative problem-solving agency. And so that's my business. I was thinking about it's either my second or my third business. Not sure how you want to count it. Yeah. I'm 46, which I think shows, proud to have all that wisdom under my belt. I've been with my husband I've known my husband for 20 years, and we are a transracial adoptive family. And my daughter is 6 years old. We have a dog. And a significant thing since when we met to where we are now, I lived in New York City or Brooklyn, New York for 15 years. And recently through the pandemic, moved to Minneapolis to be closer to family. And so my parents are in their 70s right now. So it's kind of like my full life capsule where I'm at right now.
I love that. And how long have you had Two Line Studios?
Two Line Studios is I feel like it's pretty new, but it's about 4 years now.
Yeah, 4 years. I mean, it's new and it's not, right? Like it's also what you've been doing like a good part of your life, right?
Yeah, it's basically, I feel like my grown-up career. I had my first business was kind of like my testing things out and figuring out how to be an entrepreneur. And then I've been doing facilitation, graphic facilitation, and helping clients to clarify their ideas with creativity for since 2006.
Wow.
So I'm afraid to do math out loud, but that's like a dozen years, right?
Yeah.
Maybe more. Yeah. So a while.
Yeah. I love that you said, like your grown up career. I think that, do you ever find that like all the things that you've done, like have kind of come together in this culmination of your business today?
Oh my gosh, absolutely. And that's what's so exciting about it. It's like every day you get to wake up and you're like, dang, I'm like playing to my strengths. Like, well, on the good days, like every day, like playing to my strengths, and all the tools come together. And by the time, you get to this point in your career, you're like, okay, you know what you're good at and you know what you're not good at, and you're able to like pull from experience. You have so many resources available, not necessarily not financial, but just like resources in terms of like tools and understanding and wisdom and network, and just an understanding of self and how you work best.
Yeah, I don't know if this is true for you, but I think about like just all the anguish that I've gone through as an entrepreneur through the years, and like feeling like urgency, right? To like get to that next place or whatever. And I'm curious, like if you have felt that too. Your laughter tells me that you have. um, but if you could like go back and tell your younger self something, like what would you tell her?
I would tell her, well, the first thing that came to mind is you're on the right path, keep going.
Mm.
Like that's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. Right. And what if we could like relieve some of the anguish, but also the anguish? I mean, you and I were chatting before we hit record, and I think some of that anguish, like you've reached some big milestones now in your work. And I don't know for myself if those would feel as sweet or amazing if you hadn't gone through the suffering, you know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah, we were kind of talking about, we've talked about through coaching, but then also just in, the 5 minutes leading up to this call is just like blowing up all the limiting beliefs.
Yeah.
And like looking back in time, you're like, oh my gosh, I used to believe, that I couldn't achieve this level of success. And specifically, we were talking about like being able to I was talking about providing for my family
Yes.
as just by myself, without a team, without a partner, like without, just on my own as a sole proprietor. And I just didn't believe I could do it. And then fast forward a couple of years only, and, wildly succeeded that goal. And it's nice. I think I'm mostly excited to have blown up some of those limiting beliefs, because once you do that, man, like what's possible after that to get out of your own
Yeah.
way.
Yes. So I can't wait to dive into creativity, because when I think of creativity, like you are somebody that comes to mind. And I didn't realize it when you and I worked together all those years ago. Like looking back now, I realize now that I work with a lot of creatives, and I never set out to do that. It just has sort of happened naturally. Um, but let's kind of start there. Let's go back to when you and I met and our journey together. And
Sure.
I would love to hear like where were you when you and I met and started working together? Like give us a little sense of that journey, and then I want to come back to creativity and where you are today.
Okay. I
It's
think
beautiful.
that I don't remember like the exact year that we started working, but I do know that I was in EO, which is the Entrepreneurs Organization. And I learned about journaling as a coaching tool or a tool that's used in coaching. And I have been journaling and writing stories like ever since I was a little kid. There was a joke my mom had, like, I didn't want any toys when I was 8 years old. I gave away all my toys. And I remember I would just start writing stories and drawing pictures. So I feel like I've been a lifelong journaler. And that's how you and I connected through coaching, was through journaling. And, we would have a call and then you would give me these journal prompts. And I think I remember just being up late at night, just like not being able to sleep, insomnia or whatever, and just probably writing like 30 pages of journal excerpts. And you would just be responding like, 9 a.m. Just on top of it. So that's kind of where we started. And then it evolved. I think we were working together for many years.
We did work together for a lot of years. And then I think we didn't. And then you came back for some coaching, which that often happens. So what do you remember as like a challenge that you were going through, and maybe a breakthrough that you received during coaching, or a moment of coaching that has supported you or stuck with you?
Yeah. One that I often think about through the work that we did together was kind of helping myself get out of my own way. So as an entrepreneur, I think at the time I felt like I needed to have all the answers. And spoiler, I didn't have all of the answers at all. But I had an awesome team. And so during some of those hard days when I felt like I needed to have all the answers, I remember one day I called you and I was in a park. We must have had an early morning session. I was like in a park, and you asked me just like, what can you do for other people today? How are you going to show up in support of other people today? And that moment really shifted the way that I thought about my own leadership. And it's things that still, even, like we all have rough days. We all have those days where we wake up and we're like, oh man, I just want to stay in the bed and not, face the world. But on those days, I think of that morning in the park, and I'm like, okay, how am I going to show up for my team today? Like, how can I serve today? And that's like my form of leadership. Maybe not every day, but that was a big breakthrough for me, is how I show up for other people and support my team.
I mean, it's so true. It's like when you're in your own way, I think one of the best things we can do is get outside of ourselves, right? And you get over into somebody else's world, and all of a sudden you forget about how you were in your own way, and all of a sudden then there's momentum and energy goes up and all of the above.
Well, as I was thinking about coaching in preparation for our conversation, and I kind of joke with other people, like, I've been going to therapy. I always have somebody helping me. I've got therapists, I've got mentors, went to Tony Robbins, working coaching, and whatever, peer groups and whatever that is. I think like actually coaching one-on-one, which is super cool, is that it really helps to bring clarity and focus into the self, like understanding myself, understanding my leadership, understanding like my values, and understanding like what my role is in the greater fabric of, of how I move through the world. So that's what, I don't know, I was just thinking that was a big part of the coaching. It wasn't just, how do I be a better business leader? How do I get more productive in my business? But it was like, how do I be a better wife? How do I be a mom? Because I think I adopted my daughter like while we were working together.
You did.
And how do I be the best leader that I can in my business? And so it's, they're all integrated. And that's something that was another big realization through coaching, is that it's business, personal, and family. They're all integrated when you're an artist. Or when you're an artist, when you're an entrepreneur.
An entrepreneur. Yeah. It's so true. Well, and I think that's, like you said, basically that you surround yourself with people all the time to support these different parts of yourself, and yourself as an entrepreneur and as a mother. And I think that's really important to talk about because, sometimes people have shame around needing help or having to reach out
Mm.
and admit that you want some support and help in your life. And so was that something you had to get over? Is that something that naturally came to you? Like, how did you learn that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a lesson I'm still learning all the time, is
Mm.
that like it's okay to ask for help. I had a breakthrough last night when I was doing something. I was like, oh, I don't have to do this alone. So that's something that always, I think I'm learning at different levels and peeling back the layers of the onion. But, I'd also joke with my friends during that time, like living in New York City, you cannot do it by yourself. Like you can't live in that city without like having some sort of support system. And especially as an entrepreneur, like we reach, in a second, we're going to talk about creativity, but like when I was moving from, the identity of being an artist to the identity of being an entrepreneur, dare I say a successful entrepreneur, I didn't, I didn't have, I didn't have any role models for that. I didn't know how to solve the problems. I didn't even know the questions to ask or the problems that I should be looking out for. So it became so valuable, one, to have a peer group that, we could go to every month and bring business, personal, family challenges, but then also like somebody who's just in your corner who's always got your back. I've got a friend said to me recently, said, I will always stand behind you to support or to push. And I feel like that's kind of what you get out of coaching.
And it's true. It's like I need people around me too to help me see my blind spots and the things that I can't see, right? Because there's just things that you can't see as you're on your own that are getting in your way or tripping you up or and it's so incredibly helpful to have people around you who, yeah, like you just said, are either going to support you or give you that push that you need. And
Yeah.
often for me, it's the push I need. Okay.
Right.
So creativity for me is something that I didn't believe I was creative for many, many, many years of my life. And I even had a business partner years ago who she kind of affirmed that by saying she was the creative one and I was the business side. And so it just got lodged in my head that I was not creative. And years later after that relationship, I realized that I don't know how I ever denied that I was creative because creativity is just part of everything that I do, but it doesn't look like I ever thought creativity was, right? Because we think traditionally it's like the artist or the painter and the sculptor, whatever it is. And so I'd love to hear, like, how do you define creativity?
I feel like it can be defined differently in different environments. But when I am, with my business hat on, I think that creativity is opening your mind to see things from a new perspective, to welcome new ideas and see how they butt up to each other and have a conversation. Creativity can be like the woman who works for me who's helping me like do my automation on the back end of my business, like her creativity is not the same kind of creativity that I have, but she can look at a problem and she can find a creative solution to that problem that like I just don't even, my brain doesn't work that way. Like I can draw out the vision of what I want it to look like in the end. But she's using all of her tools and resources to think about things abstractly in order to solve the problem. And I think that is a very creative approach.
Do you believe that there's creativity inside of everyone?
I absolutely believe there's creativity inside of everyone.
I do too.
Like how we form sentences, like how we communicate, how we decide to move through space. Like those are all, I guess it's a pretty broad definition of creativity.
Yeah. So tell us about your, kind of your creative journey or story.
well, we were chatting, we've been chatting for years. So I've got my classic, like how I got into business creative story. I was like, oh, I was a waitress and I was listening to conversations and I drove up and somebody asked me if, I wanted to have a job, so I've, got that entryway into my current career path through creativity, but thinking about it through the lens of what you do so well and the creativity that you bring of like coaching, I had kind of a different thought about it today.
Yeah.
And I was, on my Instagram page, just last night, I posted an image by my dear friend, Sarah Walker, that she'd taken of me years ago. And it was a collaboration that we had done. And I started reflecting on work that I have been doing as a fine artist for the past 20, 25 years. And thinking back to all of the projects that I have done since I was in undergrad, I was always desperately trying to carve out a space where I could have a quiet reflection. Whether it was like, taking 100 photographs and giving myself a task of developing 100 photographs, that meant that I had to be in the darkroom for X number of hours by myself in silence. By, just giving myself a project of, challenging myself to capture all of my stream of conscious thought on the size of like the equivalent of 2 football fields. Like that forced me quote unquote, forced me to like sit quietly in a room alone, trying to process and slow down my thoughts. And so, through the lens of coaching, I recognized that I was always seeking a space of understanding. I was always kind of seeking to understand myself. I was always seeking to deeply listen to my own, the own voice in my head, to have a greater understanding of myself. So that's kind of the answer that I have today. And, with my work, I have been doing graphic recording, which is listening to people's conversations and drawing up what's said in real time. And whether I'm, leading a visual strategy session or I'm, leading an innovation session or even like speaking about the power of visualization, I always have graphic recording as part of that process. It's always a tool that I bring in. And so I always would think like, oh, that's how I bring creativity into business. Like that's my value. That's my differentiator in business. But through the lens that we're speaking today, I think it's that ability and the knowledge and the tool of like being able to hold a quiet space for focus and understanding and asking questions that challenge and help to shift perspective. I think that, so thank you for asking me the question. So I reflected on it and I'm like, dang, like that's another tool. That's another thing that I bring into business that is often, I think, taken for granted.
Wow. So you just helped me see, like, so if I understand what you're saying, the graphic recording, and by the way, I want you to define what that is because not everybody may know what that is. And it's so cool what you do. What I hear you saying is like the graphic recording is kind of the vehicle for you to like, that's your, that's a skill that you have and a talent that you have, but it's a vehicle for you to do these almost deeper, more meaningful things that you do. And knowing you for as long as I have, I know how important those things are. Like the holding space and the creating understanding and helping people be seen and heard and like all of that. I know how important those things are to you.
Yeah, I think, as I step into my wisdom, I've been doing this for a long time. Yeah, at first it was like, oh, look at my magic trick that I can draw what people are saying in real time. And, I can describe all the values. It's like helps people to focus. It helps, to increase understanding and communication and build ideas and all of those good things. But as my business and my career has evolved, and I've evolved myself, like that skill and that tool is kind of like the foot in the door.
Yeah. It's like all of that, like we were saying, how your journey becomes like a culmination of all these things that you've done over the years. And now your business today embodies all of those. That's what I see. That's so cool. So graphic recording, I think you just described it, but
graphic recording is one of, it's part of the services that we bring at Two Line Studios. And it's, as someone's facilitating or leading a strategy session, what have you, it's someone's off at now it's either digital or at a board at the front of the room with markers and literally creating images of what's being said. So synthesizing the big ideas. So kind of like a journalist captures a headline. So capturing some of those big ideas and then anchoring those concepts with the stories that are being told in the room. So I kind of like use the example, often it's kind of silly, but if somebody's talking about, these amazing pigs, they're just like these great pigs, and they're just like, they're so pink and beautiful. And then there's someone else is like, yeah, but look at this like shiny Pegasus unicorn. And you're like, wait, you see the pigs, there's a drawing of a pig and there's a drawing of the unicorn. And you're like, wait, what if pigs could fly? Yeah, that's the answer. So it's like by capturing the stories that's happening, like there's, it leads to other parts of the conversation and helps you come up with some of those innovative ideas that might not have happened if you didn't actually see what was being said in the room.
That's so incredible. If you're listening, you got to check out what she's doing. We'll give her website. But I just absolutely love the work that you're doing, and the visual you bring ideas to life in visual form. And like you're saying, there's connections that get made that would not have happened. So I want to hear about, what is your absolute favorite part of the work that you're doing today?
My absolute favorite part of the work that I'm doing today is when teams are able to come together and recognize that they truly have shared values, or that they're truly like aligned on that vision for the future. When everybody feels like their voice has been heard, that they've been seen by their peers, and it allows everybody just to kind of relax and calm down. There's a greater sense of trust in the space. And then from there, they can start to build what that future, or that, that vision that they're looking for together would be, and how to get there.
So incredible. Okay. So for people listening, how can we take this idea of creativity like into our work, business lives? Like, I know you have a tool. I know you have many tools, but I think you brought a tool to share with us today. Like, how can we leverage this creativity in our everyday lives?
Yeah, I did want to bring a tool. Actually, I've got some templates that I can share with everybody who's listening.
Okay, great.
That kind of like walk us through what I just described, actually, like my favorite part.
I love that.
Yeah. So a couple years ago, I co-authored a book called Draw Your Big Idea. And you can find that on my website under resources, twolinestudios.com/resources. So it'll take you right to my book, Draw Your Big Idea. And in that book are two of my very favorite exercises. I feel like I use it every time I'm working with clients. It might come in a different form. It might be a different visual metaphor, but the concept and the idea is the same. So it's really about having a shared vision, or just creating a crystal clear vision, and then literally mapping out what the milestones are to make that vision actual. And you can see the visuals like on my website. They're just right there for the taking. But the idea is you'll be visual in your mind first. So you really kind of visualize what that future success will be, either as a team or as an individual, or maybe it can be in your personal life, it can be in business. But visualize what that success is. Like, say it's 3 years out, and you're visualizing the success of whatever it is you have at hand, and really making it very specific and incorporating some tangible things into that vision. So it might be like the sound of your feet walking across the floor as you're going towards the trophy that you just won, or the feeling of the weight of your suitcase as you're going to board that international flight on your dream vacation. So it could be something like that, like really start to visualize and feel that tangible aspect of it, get that vision crystal clear. And then another very important part of this visualization process is to think of the barriers to getting there. It's like thinking about like, why won't it work? What's going to hold me back from where I am today in 2022 to where I want to be in 2025? Like, what are some of those obstacles that are holding me back? So I was thinking of a personal example of like taking my family on a trip to the Swiss Alps. Like I had this dream that I wanted to go in a cabin, and be in the Swiss Alps for a couple of weeks. I had this really crystallized, how the crisp air and like the clothes I would need to be wearing. And then, I'm like, oh, well, that'll never work. Like the cost of the plane ticket, so expensive. How am I ever going to get away from my business for 2 full weeks? Planning for my entire family to travel is going to be like so much work. I'm totally slammed with work. I'm never going to be able to do that. Figuring out housing, oh my gosh, in a foreign country, that seems impossible. So I thought of all of these things that were the problem, and I wrote all those things down and set it aside.
I love that, because how often do we have like this, you have this inspired idea, and then like right behind the inspired idea is all the noise of what you just said. And so to just like get that out, right? Like address it,
right.
Expect it,
write it down. And like, there's also this, like I love to get on the like, I'm a big dreamer. I like to dream big and really like get deep into the visualization of like what I want in my life. But like I'm also a realist. Like it's not going to happen without putting action into it. It's not going to happen without problems. So guess what? Let's identify what all the problems are and then figure out what the potential answers are. So that's the next template that you can use, is this like vision, mapping the path to success. Mm-hmm. So visualizing that future. So you take the ideas and again, there's a template that's right on my website that you can use, put that vision of success. So in my example, it's that cute farmhouse that's in the Swiss Alps. And that's, in the upper right-hand corner. Then I put in the lower left-hand corner is, where I am today, like sitting in my office mm-hmm. or, where I was, in January. And so then what I did is like, okay, so what if I was able to actually get rid of all of these challenges? Like, what if I was able to solve for all of these challenges? So one is like, so you kind of work backwards from the beginning, from that vision of success, you work backwards. Like, what are the biggest milestones that you have to overcome in order to achieve that success? One of them was like stepping away from my business for 2 weeks and making sure that it didn't collapse without me checking my email. Like that was a big milestone. So I wrote it down. Buying the airplane tickets and not feeling like I had to spend, thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. So, figuring out how to solve that solution. Housing, like figuring that out of what that needed to be. So mapping out all of these different levels, these different milestones, and then solving for each one of those and writing down in detail what has to be done in order to achieve each one of those milestones.
Someone who has trouble dreaming or like starting with that vision, do you have any ideas for like how to get started in that part of the process?
Yeah, I do actually. Thanks for asking that question. The answer that I have is like getting, it's what I just mentioned earlier about being in my art practice, right? Is about like finding that quiet, focused space. And that's really freaking hard. Like, especially if you own a business, you're managing teams, you have a family, especially if you have like a 5-year-old who's going to kindergarten. Like, what? It's like a lot going on all of the time. And so if we are thinking about, it's hard for us to be present and have clarity in the present moment if we're thinking about something that we regret in the past, or we're thinking about something that we have to plan for and take care of in the future. So how do we get to that point where we're able to quiet our mind in the present moment? Journaling, I think, is one way that you can do that. I talked about that. But even if you don't want to journal and write down words, putting your body into motion, like using kinetic energy, really can help that. So even putting pen to paper and drawing, like if it's even just drawing circles or just doodles, like a scribble on the page of paper for like 2 or 3 minutes, that can help to bring you into the present state. Because there was some research that was done out of MIT where they were actually they were studying multitasking, and a result of that study was that they found that your body can't be in motion and simultaneously be worrying about the future or worrying about something that happened in the past. It takes you out of this imminent fear if your body's in motion. That act of like sitting in the studio and doodling can really start to help gain that clarity, especially if you start the session with like the question, what does the future hold? And then doodling for 2 or 3 minutes.
Yeah. And it doesn't have to be like some big thing. It could be a smaller dream that you have. You could start with something smaller. A lot of times I ask people like, what is it that you want to feel? And
yeah.
And then what can you do to create that more of that feeling in your life? And maybe that could also lead to, something that you want to create in your future. So I took a visual journaling class last year, and I could not,
cool.
It was really cool. And I couldn't get over how just what you just described, that the act of drawing or even coloring, how much it relaxed my brain.
Mm-hmm.
So good.
Yeah, the neuroscientist who did that study was, his name is Dr. Earl Miller, and it was a study out of MIT. I don't remember what year it was in, but it's pretty easy to find that study if folks are interested in learning more.
What are you up to now? What are you excited about that's next for you or your business? And lastly, I want to know what differently means to you.
Oh, good question. What I'm excited about coming up in the next 3 months, going into the beginning of the year, I'm leading a series of workshops. So one of the workshops is going to be on identifying and clarifying your own purpose. So it can be your purpose in your business or your personal purpose. And then also doing a end of the year reflection workshop, and then a visual strategy for the next year. So those are 3 things that are.
And if there's people listening who have a company or a team and are interested in the work you do, like give us a little sense of what you could do for their company or team. And do you do that virtually?
Yeah, we have been doing a lot of visual strategy work with our clients. We do it both in person and virtually online. And so typically, as of lately in the past year or two, we've been sometimes we're working with the C-suite folks doing the visual strategy for the whole entire organization for the next 5-year plan. And in other cases, we've been working with smaller teams who are trying to get aligned with that company vision. Rumor has it that people have had a hard time connecting that we've all been virtual, and a lot of us are staying virtual. So what we've been doing is we've been working with leadership teams and leaders in the organization to identify what that vision of the future is for the organization. And then those individual departments are starting to visually map out what the goals are that are aligned with that bigger vision. Does that make sense? Am I being clear?
It does. It does. And I think I saw something on your website or your social media, like about just that, like the future is kind of hybrid. And it sounds like you're helping to bridge connection in this new environment that we're all working in. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think there's 2 aspects of it. So one is that everybody on the team has a very clear vision of their individual role in how the company is moving forward. So it's giving them more purpose to their own work and helping them to helping them to see the value that they bring in the small, even if they're doing data entry, seeing how that value contributes to the greater whole of the organization. But then on the other hand, it's also when we are working together and I'm leading small groups, those teams are able to form a lot more trust. Because we're spending some time like really talking about the value that the individual teams need. So again, people really feel like their voice is heard and that they're being seen by their colleagues.
And that's bridging connection, and so good. So good. Okay. So what does differently mean to you?
Good question. I hadn't thought about this in advance. I think that differently means to me, it comes to mind about having an open mindset, about being able to see a variety of different perspectives and being able to approach problem solving in a new, innovative way.
Yeah. I mean, to me, that's kind of how I see it too, is because we have so much creativity inside of us. Like it's what we've been talking about all day. And our daily lives, we can call upon that creativity to really change the experience that we're having in any moment of our life. So beautiful. Where can people find you? I know you gave your website. Let's say it again. And then Instagram or anywhere else that people can connect with you.
Sure. It's twolinestudios.com. And you can find us on LinkedIn at Two Line Studios. You can find us at Instagram at Two Line Studios. We're on Facebook too. And then you can always reach out to me directly. And it's at Heather_Willems is my personal handle on all of the platforms as well.
So good. I'm so grateful for you and our long-standing relationship. And it is really, really awesome to see your evolution as a human, as a leader, as a business owner. And it's just been a joy to have you. So I thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your wisdom and story with Differently listeners.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Differently. I hope it stirred your thinking, and I invite you to take one inspired action from something that stood out to you. If you want to hear more conversations like this, hit follow on your favorite podcast app. And if this episode could impact someone you know, please share it and pass it along. Remember, new episodes drop weekly. See you next week.